The world of financial fair play is a confusing and contradictory place, filled with accusations, media narratives, and more lawyers than the Supreme Court. With the recent decision around Everton and their points deduction, there are a lot of questions about financial conduct and what the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules mean for those who break them. 3 clubs at present are in the hot seat for FFP, that being Everton, Chelsea, and Manchester City. In this video, we're going to give you a breakdown of what P&S is, how the club's cases differ, and why it appears that some clubs are being treated differently to others. Before we get into it though, hit the like button and subscribe to JK Halftime for more videos like this one. Let's get into it. And before we get into Everton, we need to understand the Premier League's P&S structure and how it works. The Premier League and the FA will investigate clubs based on the accounting data provided to them, and whatever information they can gather about the business side of the club. If the Premier League believes a breach has been found in a club, they can be charged, and an independent commission is called in for the club and the Premier League to present their arguments. The commission has final say on whether rules were broken, to what extent they were broken, what punishment is required, and any mitigating or aggravating factors. However, even if charged, future appeals can be pushed up to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now you've got the basics, let's get into Everton. And hold on, because this can get pretty technical and jargon heavy, but we'll try to simplify as best we can without leaving out important details. Everton is the most concrete in terms of what we know at this stage, because they have been investigated, charged, and punished already. If Everton are on stage 3 of this process, Man City are in stage 2, and Chelsea are in stage 1. This season, Everton were accused by the Premier League of going over the allowable threshold of £105 million for a Premier League club's loss over the standard rolling 3-year FFP monitoring period. The clubs were accused of being £19.5 million in excess of the threshold for the 1920, 2021, and 21-22 financial years. Originally, Everton denied the charges, claiming that they were well under the acceptable threshold at around minus £87 million. However, just before the original hearing, Everton accepted that breaches had been made to a certain extent. So, Everton are guilty and even admitted as such, but it was then time for them to present their arguments alongside the Premier League to the Commission in order to recognize to what extent P&S rules had been broken and if there were any factors that would help or hinder Everton's ruling. Everton argued that they had only breached the threshold by only £9.7 million. Incurring a loss of $114.7 million instead of the $124.5 million that the Premier League accused them of. Everton argued that £7.6 million paid to the Premier League by Everton should be excluded under P&S rules, as it directly contributed to youth development. Everton did pay $7.6 million to the Premier League in total, but as the standard 4% transfer tax, which is used to pay premiums under the Professional Footballers' Pension Scheme, the Premier League takes any surplus funds from that and pays it to the Professional Game Youth Fund. Everton argued that the money therefore contributed to youth development and should be excluded. But the Commission rejected this on the basis that this was not a direct contribution to youth development, as is laid out in its exemption to P&S rules. Similarly, no club had ever tried to exclude this pay from their own accounts before, meaning every other club in the Premier League was fine with this payment appearing on their books. So there was very little precedent to assist Everton's argument, and it was rightly rejected. Everton's second argument was around a £2.2 million charge of interest by Everton Football Club to Everton Stadium Development Limited, a subsidiary company, in order to pass on interest that the club could have paid onto its commercial lenders. Everton said that such interest should be excluded because it is in direct relation to a qualifying asset, that being their new stadium, as the loans would not exist if there was no stadium development. The Commission rejected this also, on the basis that the interest-free loans provided to fund the stadium were coming from Everton owner Farhad Moshiri himself, rather than commercial loans to the club. Therefore, these interest payments were not related to the stadium and cannot be excluded. The Commission found Everton guilty of being £19.5 million over the threshold, but then it was time to consider mitigating or aggravating factors from both sides in order for Everton to receive a fair punishment. The Commission somewhat accepted only one of the 6 mitigating circumstances Everton presented, that being that their accounts had shown an upward trajectory and the club had shown an effort to cut costs. This limits Everton's culpability somewhat. However, other circumstances made the issue worse for Merseyside Blues. Everton were found to have submitted misleading information around their stadium financing costs. Having also abandoned some of their arguments before the original hearing meant that the commission found that Everton weren't always acting in good faith to the investigation, which further increased their culpability. The commission decided to dock Everton 10 points for the breach, in what some have called a harsh ruling. But the commission understood a financial penalty wouldn't suffice when considering their backing by Moshiri, who is worth $3.1 billion, as such a sporting sanction was deemed the only appropriate measure. Everton were disappointed by the decision and will likely look to appeal the points deduction in order to reduce it, but it stands for now. It's important to dispel the myth that Everton Stadium is the reason they breached P&S, as these costs were already excluded from P&S through a previous agreement. Everton are not the victims here. They overspent on players and struggled to sell others. They also finished lower than expected in the 21-22 season, costing them £21 million in lost prize money. This resulted in the club taking a risk with its finances that didn't pay off, and ultimately led to the breach. While it is clear that Everton's breach was ignorance over maliciously trying to gain a sporting advantage, it is still significant as the first points deduction handed out to a Premier League club for breaching P&S. However, things may get worse still for Everton, as several clubs who were relegated during the offending 3-year period, including Leicester, Leeds, and Southampton, may see compensation from the club for losses in both prize money and Premier League TV revenue. Clubs have until mid-December to decide whether to pursue their claims.
Sorry to interrupt, but before we continue, I have to tell you guys about Sorare, a fully verified and trusted website where you can invest in sports stars and build your fantasy teams. Put your sports knowledge to work and make profits. Sign up through the link in the description to get a free card.
Still with us? Good. On to Chelsea. In contrast to Everton's situation, Chelsea is the least concrete of the three clubs as they are currently being investigated by the Premier League, but no charges have been brought forward. Chelsea have outspent everyone since the Clear Lake Consortium took over, but clever accounting such as the use of the now closed amortization loophole and player sales have ensured Chelsea appear above board with the current regime. Where there is suspicion and doubt, however, is over Chelsea's previous ownership under oligarch Roman Abramovich. Todd Boehly, Mehrdad Eghbali, and Clear Lake Capital are well aware of FFP, with Boehly himself stating that FFP was gaining some real teeth at a conference after the takeover was completed. Chelsea's new owners actually self-reported what they considered to be financial irregularities from Abramovich's time at the club. This was in reference to payments made to the clubs of William and Samuel Eto'o that were not fully disclosed. As a result, Chelsea have received a fine for trouble. However, Chelsea had already set aside £100 million during the takeover to account for financial penalties that resulted from their own due diligence. This in and of itself tells you that Chelsea's financial history is not whiter than white, and paints a picture of Chelsea's FFP strategy. An understanding of FFP, being run by a private equity firm that deals in capital and risks, buying tons of younger players and putting money aside for fines, may indicate that the owners know larger payments could be coming, including more fines, points deductions, or a transfer embargo. More news has recently come out over Abramovich's potential dodgy dealings, with the Cyprus confidential cash leak implicating Abramovich, linking companies of his 2 offshore payments to football agents of Eden Hazard, Antonio Conte, and Bertrand Traore and others. If found to be in breach of P&S as a result of this, Chelsea will be charged and face a punishment. It is difficult to ascertain what punishment would be appropriate right now, as we don't know the extent to which the rules may have been broken by Chelsea during Abramovich's tenure. Where Chelsea has their strongest asset, however, will be in the mitigating circumstances. The new ownership is entirely unconnected to the old one, and Clear Lake may ask that this be a considered mitigating factor in a punishment. They may say, "That was Abramovich, not us. We had no idea. Don't punish us for something he did." Unlike Everton, Chelsea's current ownership strategy to be extremely forthcoming to the point of self-reporting will also help them if a commission decides to charge the West London club. Similarly, Chelsea may have some plausible deniability of the club's knowledge of the offshore payments at the time, owed to the way that Abramovich operated. The intent and extent to which Chelsea broke P&S rules will be key, as it remains to be discovered whether Chelsea actually broke P&S rules or simply did not submit all the information at the time. These are factors that will need to be considered when the commission potentially gives Chelsea a punishment. Based on this and Everton's case, it's not unreasonable to expect a small points deduction, a large fine, and a transfer ban. However, until more news comes out, this is just speculation. Right, the big one. The reason you all clicked on this video. Manchester City. Now, the reason we went into such detail about Everton is to show you all just how complicated FFP charges and processes can be. Everton had one charge. Manchester City faced 115. This is why Everton's case was handled pretty quickly by comparison. On top of that, Everton admitted some wrongdoing while Man City deny any. So imagine Everton's situation but times 115 across a bunch of different rules and regulations. All the while, City Football Group's army of lawyers aim to stonewall and delay the investigation by any means necessary. It is important to note Manchester City have yet to be found guilty of anything, but they are accused of 115 separate offenses by the Premier League for what that's worth. City's various charges span the 09-10 to 17-18 seasons, which effectively saw their rise from mid-table Premier League upstarts to a ruthless footballing dynasty that has since conquered world football. But if even a handful of the charges against them are found to be true, they could be in serious trouble. City are accused of breaking a large number of Premier League rules per season. This is where the 115 number comes from. But what are the actual charges? What have City supposedly done? The Premier League accuses Man City of breaking rules related to acting in the utmost good faith with other Premier League clubs and the Premier League itself. The submission of accounts past, present, and future to the Registrar for Companies, as well as to the Premier League and UEFA. They are also accused of breaking rules around the provision of tickets for clubs visiting the Etihad Stadium, submissions of changes in financial projections, Premier League P&S rules, UEFA FFP rules, and the accurate reporting and registration of both manager and player salaries. This is hugely simplified, but this is a laundry list of charges that implicate City top to bottom while they continue to deny any wrongdoing and claim indisputable evidence of their innocence. This is not City's first FFP rodeo though, having challenged UEFA in the courts of arbitration for sport after they were banned from European competition for 2 years under the accusation of false reporting of sponsorship revenue. The CAS ruled with City and their ban was overturned. But the CAS did state that City were guilty of not cooperating with UEFA's investigation. Man City claimed this was due to a distrust of the process, but will be hard-pressed to do so again by the Premier League itself, as a clear pattern has emerged. Different to Chelsea, who aim to accept diminished responsibility in exchange for compliance and a lesser punishment, Man City's strategy relies on delaying the process through legal means, which they had successfully done since the investigation began in 2018. This isn't a surprise though, as Man City has far too much to lose given the scope of the charges, and if the ruling doesn't go in their favor, they may find themselves with aggravating circumstances that could see a nasty punishment come their way. The difference here is Chelsea can afford to lose in sporting sanction terms. City might not be able to. It could be win big or lose everything. City cannot hide behind an army of lawyers forever, and a date for their showdown with the Premier League has been set for late August 2024, as the Premier League continues to gather its evidence, meaning a verdict is unlikely to come to fruition until sometime in 2025. We have a long way to go until then, and more information may come out that yet proves City's innocence or guilt. But now you have the facts. FFP, P&S, Everton, Chelsea, and Man City. What it's all for, and why their situations are so different. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to JK Halftime for more videos like this.